Welcome back, friends. Tonight, we're settling in with a collection of unexplainable Reddit horror stories. Strange, chilling, and quietly unsettling. These are the kinds of tales that linger in the corners of your mind, the ones you think about long after the lights are out. So, find a comfortable spot. Maybe a blanket. Maybe a warm drink. Let the world slow down for a while, and let these stories carry you into the night. I'm grateful you're here, truly. Your time, your presence, it means more than I can say. If you've been enjoying these quiet journeys with me, sharing them helps more than you know. We're slowly building something together, and every voice that joins us makes it stronger. So now, without hurry, without noise, let's drift into tonight's collection of unexplainable Reddit horror stories. Selling your soul to the devil isn't as simple as the stories make it sound. This one was written by Poco for Life. I never believed in the devil, not really. But then, one Tuesday afternoon, I met him. Not at a crossroads, not in a circle of candles and smoke. No. He was sitting in a coffee shop, grind coffee, corner table, navy suit stretched tight across his shoulders, reading the Financial Times as if he had all the time in the world. The only thing that gave him away was how he knew my name. Marcus Chen, he said, without looking up. His voice smooth, casual. Rough couple of months, haven't they been? And then he smiled. A smile that felt too sharp, too knowing. I froze. Do I know you? I asked. But deep down I already knew the answer. And I knew it would change everything. He smiled, his teeth unnervingly white, too white. Please, sit. I have a proposition that might interest you. The words slid out smooth, practiced like he'd said them 1,000 times before. I should have walked away. Every sensible part of me screamed to keep moving. Grab the latte, forget this ever happened. But I sat, as if choice had already been taken from me. I'm in the business of solving problems, he said, folding his newspaper with precise, deliberate creases. And you, Marcus, you have quite a few. He wasn't wrong. The foreclosure notice pressed heavy in my pocket. Credit cards maxed out. Sarah, gone 3 months now with Emma. My startup, ashes, nothing but debt and failure. Who are you? I asked. Names have power, he replied toughly. Let's just say, I'm someone who can help. Your house, you're about to lose it. Your daughter barely speaks to you. Your ex-wife sees you as a failure. Your credit is ruined. Your partners won't take your calls. He leaned back. Am I close? The precision hit like a punch. How do you, I started. He chuckled. Know all this? It's my business to know. The real question is, how badly do you want to fix it? I stared at him. He looked ordinary. An accountant, maybe. Salt and pepper hair, kind eyes, arms thick as my head. What are you suggesting? I asked. A transaction. The fair one, actually. You have something I want, and I have something you need. He reached into his pocket, drew out a leather portfolio. I'm offering you $1 million, untraceable. Enough to save your house, win back your family. Start fresh. I sighed. His tone slick, corporate, irritating. In exchange for what? I asked. Just a small piece of your soul, nothing dramatic. 10%, you'll hardly notice it's gone. I laughed, too loud, too sharp. You're insane! Am I? He opened the portfolio. Photographs, my house, my daughter's school, Sarah's apartment. Marcus, he said, his voice smooth as glass. In 3 days, the bank will repossess your home. In 2 weeks, your daughter will leave her school. In a month, you'll be sleeping in your car. He closed the folder with a soft snap. I'm offering you a way out. You're talking about selling my soul to the devil. He smiled almost kindly. I'm talking about a limited partnership arrangement. Think of it as spiritual equity financing. You retain majority ownership, 90%. I just take a small stake. In exchange, I solve your immediate liquidity crisis. The jargon almost made it sound reasonable, almost. This is crazy, I whispered, but I didn't leave. Crazy, he said, leaning forward, would be letting your pride ruin your family. Crazy would be sleeping in your car while your daughter thinks her father is a failure. I'm not asking for your firstborn, not eternal damnation, just 10%. I thought of Emma, her eyes when I couldn't take her to the movies, Sarah's voice, sharp with contempt. What exactly happens to that 10%? Nothing dramatic, he said. You'll just find yourself more pragmatic, less bogged down by moral complexities. Small changes, barely noticeable. He chuckled, and I sat there, minutes stretching into hours. Finally, I asked softly, "How does this work?" He reached into his portfolio and drew out a contract. It looked ordinary, legal, dense with clauses and signature lines, but at the bottom, in stark black ink, it spelled out the impossible. 10% of Party A's immortal soul, exchanged for $1 million. Just sign here, he said, producing a fountain pen that seemed to appear from nowhere, and initial here to acknowledge you understand the terms. My hand trembled as I took the pen. This was madness, impossible, and yet the foreclosure notice in my pocket was real. So was the thought of Emma's disappointed face. I signed. The moment the pen left the paper, something shifted. Not drastic, but like a strong cup of coffee had surged through my veins. Sharper, more alert. He smiled as the contract vanished into his portfolio. Pleasure doing business with you, Marcus. He extended his hand. His skin was warm. Too warm. Then we'll be in your account by tomorrow morning, that's it. He paused at the door, though you may find other opportunities present themselves soon. When they do, you'll know how to reach me. And then he was gone. I sat there staring at my coffee, wondering if I'd just hallucinated the entire thing, but the money was there the next morning, exactly as promised. Within 6 months, everything had changed. A house was saved. A new company had risen from the ashes. Sarah was answering my calls again. Emma was back in her school, smiling, laughing. At 10% I'd given up. It felt like the bargain of the century. The changes were subtle, just as he'd say. I found myself cutting corners in ways that once would have bothered me. When a competitor's company faltered, I bought them out for pennies. When regulators threatened my business, I made sure the problem disappeared. And each time it felt easier, more natural, almost inevitable. Pragmatism. The world was unforgiving, and these were the kinds of choices successful people had to make. The second meeting came at a downtown restaurant. I was celebrating a major contract when he slid into the booth across from me, looking exactly as he had 8 months before. Congratulations on the Henderson deal, he said. Quite a coup. Thanks. I tried to sound casual, but my stomach twisted at the sight of him. What brings you here? A complication, I'm afraid. His tone was smooth, almost sympathetic. You see that Henderson contract? Your competitor was poised to land it. They had the inside track. Better bid, better relationship with the client. I frowned, but I won it fair and square. He tilted his head, smiling. You won because certain information reached certain people, and certain pressure was applied in certain areas. Information and pressure that, shall we say, came from my resources. My throat tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying that my 10% stake in your soul has been working hard on your behalf. Harder than we initially agreed. He flashed that too white smile. I'm going to need to renegotiate. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. We had a deal. We did, he said, folding his hands neatly on the table. But that deal has been exceeded. Your success hasn't been entirely your doing. My investment has been quite active. He reached into his jacket, sliding another contract across the table. I'll need another 15%. 15? My voice cracked. That will bring you to 25. Still a minority stake, he said reasonably, and frankly, fair, given the value I've added to your life. He leaned back, grinning. Of course, if you'd prefer, I could withdraw my support, and we could see how well you do without it. The threat was clear, even if unspoken. Everything I had rebuilt could vanish. What happens if I say no? Well, he said lightly, the Henderson contract would fall through. Seems there might be irregularities in the bidding process. Your financing could encounter obstacles. And Sarah, oh, she might start wondering where all this sudden success came from. He leaned back, smiling. I'd hate to see you lose everything again. I stared at the contract. 15% more. A lot, but still majority control, and losing everything now would be worse than the days before. I had so much more to lose. I signed. The change was sharper, noticeable. I found myself making choices that would have horrified the man I'd been years ago. When a small supplier failed to deliver, I didn't replace them. I destroyed them. When an employee threatened to quit, I didn't negotiate. I made sure she was blacklisted according to the industry. Even the beggars on the street, I looked into their eyes and felt nothing. No pity, or any adulation. And it felt not just reasonable, but necessary, even satisfying. Sarah moved back in after a year. Emma called me daddy again. My business thrived. And the 25% of my soul I'd given away seemed like a small price for everything I'd gained. The third meeting came at my office. No appointment. I just looked up one day, and he was there, sitting across from me. We need to talk, he said. By now I knew the routine. Some new crisis, some justification for another piece of my soul. I was ready. What's the problem this time? He smiled. Your wife, he said simply. Sarah, I asked, my voice tight. What about her? He leaned forward, his smile sharp. She's been asking questions about your sudden turnaround, about your business practices. She's suspicious. Suspicious of what? She's hired a private investigator, Marcus. A very good one. He's been digging into your finances, your dealings, your associates. And some of what he's finding is problematic. A coldness spread through me. What kind of problematic? The kind that leads to federal investigations. The kind that leads to prison time. He paused, his grin widening. The kind that leads to your daughter visiting you through bulletproof glass. You're lying, am I? He slid a manila folder across my desk. Inside photographs, documents, bank records. Individually, they might have been explained away. Together, they painted a picture of systematic corruption. This is all circumstantial, I said, though my voice was weak. Perhaps, but it's enough to raise questions, enough to start an investigation that unravels everything. Your business, your marriage, your relationship with Emma, everything. My hand shook. For the first time in a long time, I felt fear. Real fear. What do you want? 30% more, he said smoothly. That would give me 55%, a controlling interest. In exchange, all of this disappears. The investigator has an accident. Sarah's suspicions fade. Your life continues exactly as it is. 55%, I whispered. That's more than half. It is. But consider the alternative. I looked again at the photographs, at the evidence, at what I'd become, what we'd become. Because none of this had happened in a vacuum. Every decision, hasty and reasonable, necessary. If you have controlling interest, I asked, what does that mean for me? Oh, don't worry, he said softly. Nothing will change. You'll still have free will. You'll just find yourself more aligned with my interests. More efficient, less burdened by concerns that interfere with success. I thought about Emma, about Sarah, about everything I had built, and I signed. The change this time was immediate, profound. It was like someone had adjusted the contrast on my moral vision. What once seemed questionable now felt obviously correct. The nagging voice of conscience was gone. There was no good, no bad, only success. I fired a dozen employees without cause. Too expensive. I foreclosed on 3 small businesses. Knowing it would destroy the families behind them, I manipulated stock prices. I crushed competitors with a ruthless precision that felt alien to who I'd once been, and utterly natural to who I was becoming. Sarah stopped asking questions. The investigator's report vanished. My empire grew, but I was beginning to understand I wasn't driving any oar. I was just along for the ride. The 4th meeting came at Emma's school. I was watching her soccer game when he sat down beside me on the bleachers. She's quite talented, he said, nodding toward my daughter. Don't The word left me sharp, cold. Don't even think about bringing her into this. Relax, Marcus, I'm not here about Emma. I'm here about you. He patted my back, almost friendly. What now? I asked. You're dying, he said, with a frown that didn't quite reach his jawline. The words hit like a blow. What? Pancreatic cancer. Very aggressive, 6 months, maybe less. He said it as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. Of course, medicine has its limitations, he added, but I don't. I stared at him, then at Emma running across the field, her laughter carrying on the wind. You're lying. He leaned closer, his hand gripping my waist. The symptoms will start next week. You'll think it's stress. By the time you see a doctor, it'll be too late for conventional treatment. He turned, his eyes locking on mine. But not too late for unconventional treatment. I swallowed hard. Let me guess, you want more of my soul. 35% more, he said smoothly. That would give me 90% total. In exchange, the cancer disappears. You live a long, healthy life. You get to watch Emma graduate, get married, have children of her own. You'll get to watch Emma graduate, get married, have children of her own. His voice was smooth, almost reassuring. 90%, I repeated. That leaves me with 10. Still enough, he said softly. Enough to keep your memories, your love for your family, your essential self. You'll just be more focused, more efficient, less conflicted. And if I say no, then you die. Slowly, painfully, Emma watches her father waste away. Sarah becomes a widow. Your empire collapses. Everyone who depends on you crumbles. On the field, Emma scored a goal. She turned, waving at me, her face bright with joy. I waved back, though my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Why? I asked. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything, Marcus. I am offering solutions to a life full of problems. You're the one making the choices. But you're engineering the problems. Am I? I didn't give you cancer. I didn't make you eat those donuts. I didn't make your wife suspicious. Your own actions did that. I only offered to fix it. Every step of the way, you had choices. And you chose the path that led you here. He was right. And that was the most horrifying part. Every decision had been mine. Every signature voluntary. Piece by piece, I had sold myself. But watching Emma celebrate with her teammates, I knew I couldn't face dying. Couldn't face leaving her. I signed. The change was immediate. Like stepping into another person's skin, the last fragment of my old moral framework vanished. I felt lighter, sharper, certain of my purpose. The world was suddenly clear, divided neatly between things that served my interests and things that didn't. The next day, I fired my brother. He had questioned my methods, and I no longer had patience for questions. I had evicted families, destroyed a charity, cut salaries, cut bonuses, and none of it bothered me. It all felt reasonable. Sarah seemed happier. She stopped asking questions. Emma thrived in her expensive school. I was successful, healthy, wealthy beyond anything I'd ever dreamed. But I was barely human. A mind in a shell, a suit of flesh. The final meeting was inevitable. I'd been expecting it for months. He appeared in my home office on a quiet Sunday evening. Emma was upstairs doing homework. Sarah was reading in the living room. Everything was perfect. Hello, Marcus. I didn't respond. I'm here with good news. You've been such an exemplary partner that I'm prepared to offer you the deal of a lifetime. I looked up. Deal? Total buyout. I purchase your remaining 10%. In exchange, Emma and Sarah will want for nothing. Emma will get into any college she wants. Sarah will be happy, prosperous. They'll both live long, successful lives. And you'll be exactly who you've been becoming. Successful, powerful, effective. You just won't be you anymore. I leaned back in my chair. Strange how calm I felt about this moment I'd been dreading. What happens to my soul when you own 100% of it? It becomes mine completely. Your body continues, your mind continues, but the spark that made you, Marcus Chen, transfers to me. You become an extension of my will. I become you, a part of me. I thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago. Desperate, failing, losing everything. That man seemed like a stranger now, weak, foolish, held back by silly moral constraints. But he had loved Emma with pure, uncomplicated joy. He had loved Sarah without calculation. He had felt remorse when he hurt people. What guarantee do I have that you'll keep your word about Emma and Sarah? None. But what choice do you have? And he was right. He'd been right every step of the way. I could refuse. But then what? I was already 90% his, already bound to his will in all but the smallest matters. And Emma and Sarah would face whatever future awaited them without his protection. If I sign this, I asked quietly, will I still remember who I was? Oh yes, he said. Those memories are valuable. They help inform decisions, provide emotional context for manipulating others. You'll remember Marcus Chen very clearly. You just won't be him anymore. I picked up the pen. It felt familiar now. Like an old tool I'd grown comfortable using. One last question, I said. What's your name? Your real name? For the first time, he looked genuinely pleased. And for some reason his face seemed oddly familiar. You can call me Marcus, he said. That's who I'm going to be. I signed. The change was instantaneous, total. I felt my sense of self drain away like water from a broken cup. What remained was crystal clarity, perfect focus, complete understanding of my role in a larger design. I am no longer Marcus Chen. I am something that wears Marcus Chen's face, that speaks with his voice, that carries his memories. I run his empire, I live in his house, I kiss his wife goodnight. Emma still calls me daddy. Sarah Yule loves the man she thinks I am. They are happy, prosperous, protected, just as promised. And sometimes late at night, when they are both asleep, I remember what it felt like to be the man who loved them. I remember his hopes, his fears, his desperate desire to be good. I remember his weakness, his desperation, and his fatal inability to understand that every deal with me was exactly as straightforward as it seemed. The devil told me his name, after all. And now, when desperate people find themselves in coffee shops, in restaurants, on school bleachers, speaking with a man in a well-tailored suit who knows their problems and has solutions to offer, they're talking to whatever is left of Marcus. He offers them exactly what I offered him. Reasonable terms, logical arguments, the gradual purchase of their souls in convenient installments. Just like me, he's always honest about the transactions. Just like me, he never lies about the consequences. And just like me, he finds the desperate people will sell themselves piece by piece, convincing themselves each time that it's just a reasonable business decision. Right up until the moment there's nothing left to sell. It's exactly as straightforward as it seems. They just don't want you to see it. And that brings me to another story. Because I am certain that every one of you, without exception, knew at least one kid in elementary school who seemed different. Maybe they were irritating. Maybe they chewed on pencils, made strange noises, or maybe they were always in trouble. Their report cards filled with red ink. But the person I want to tell you about wasn't your ordinary weird kid. Dor was different. Yes, Dor, that was his name. Not a nickname. It was right there on the report card, on his student ID. I don't quite remember his last name, something common. Smith, maybe, or Jackson. But it didn't matter, because everyone knew who you meant when you said Dor. He was always dressed in a checkered shirt and belted trousers, clothes that seemed too big for him. And no matter how much he grew, they always stayed that way. His eyes were small, and strangest of all, perfectly round. The kid looked like a puppet from some children's theatre. His face was always smeared with cream or moisturizer, shining faintly under the classroom lights. His ears sat too straight, too shallow. He was short, much shorter than the rest of us, and his blonde hair was cut into a stiff little bowl. My friends, Martin and Luke, used to whisper that he must be Swedish, or maybe Norwegian. The name Dor sounded Scandinavian, they said, and besides, he spoke with an odd accent. When he was called on to read aloud, he pronounced every word slowly, painfully precise, exaggerated. His lower jaw would jut forward in this strange, mechanical way. I remember that most of all. It made him look off, but aside from that peculiar way of speaking, nothing else suggested weakness. Quite the opposite. Dor got straight A's, sometimes A+. He became the class nerd, the one everyone leaned on. Homework, projects, assignments, he carried them all, and he never refused. It was as if he didn't even know how to say no. He simply obeyed, like a machine. Even when half the class owed him their work, he delivered it all, punctual, neat, inhumanly consistent. He never seemed tired, never complained. When I think back on him now, I realize I don't remember Dor ever showing emotion, not once. He was empty, hollow, like something imitating a boy, and when he did speak, it was only when absolutely necessary. Even when we worked together on a group project, he spoke sparingly, flat, precise, always with the diligence of an accountant. Never late, never sick. Dor was there, but he wasn't there. It surprised me, because he had never initiated a conversation with anyone before. His round eyes fixed on me like two cameras, studying me, as if I was some newly discovered reptile in a glass case. "Excuse me," he began, slowly, precisely, that same strange accent shaping every word. "I won't be at school tomorrow. I'm going with my parents to my grandparents. Could you bring me your English notebook the day after tomorrow? I will need it to catch up on the class." I blinked at him. Dor had never asked anyone for anything, and he'd done my homework for me more than once. So I agreed. "Good, thank you. Sorry for asking you like this, but I have to do my homework." He said it flatly, still staring straight at me, and in his voice I heard something strange, as if the words weren't his own, as if he were only pretending to be a student. He handed me a note, his address, then walked away. On the way home, I unfolded it. The handwriting was wrong. Not the neat, mechanical script he used in school. This was jagged, uneven, and beneath the address was a small, hand-drawn map. It looked like a child had drawn it, but it was too precise, almost topographical. I stared at it for a long time, and when the next day came, just as he'd said, Dor wasn't at school. By Thursday, everyone had noticed. The teachers, the students. Whispers filled the classroom. I tried to calm them down. Even a boy like Dor had to miss school eventually. Even he wasn't immune to absence, but when Friday came, and he was still gone, I remembered the note, the address, and I decided to keep my promise. The neighborhood was wrong. No houses, no apartments. Just factories, repair shops, workshops, and then there it was, a square block of concrete, a strange chimney jutting out one side. It looked like a child's drawing of a house, made real. Windows too large, a flat door with no number, a round knob. I knocked, uncertain, and after a moment, Dor opened it. He looked different. His face flushed, covered in pimples, his lips cracked and dry, and his legs bent strangely as if his knees didn't work the way they should. "Glad you made it," he said. "I couldn't be at school today. My parents want me to stay home. I'm sick." His voice was cold, flat. "Do you have the notebook?" Yes, of course." I handed it to him. "Thank you. I will return it when—" He stopped abruptly, because from behind him came a sound, something between a knock and a scrape. Quiet, almost nothing but Dor's reaction. That was what froze me for the first time. I saw real emotion on his face, fear. staring into the depths of that unfinished house, and I stood there, notebook gone from my hand, wondering what could possibly frighten a boy like Dor. Narrator pauses, a gentle silence settling in. Would you like me to continue shaping the next scene inside the house in this same style? I peeked past him, just a little, and saw the house was filled with strange objects. Some small, some large. Some shaped like chairs, others like tables. All of them smooth, black, plastic. Modern decor, I thought. But why couldn't I see his parents? Then I remembered my mother once, after a parent-teacher conference, had mentioned them. They were like him. Strange, oddly dressed, speaking with that same peculiar accent. And as if my thoughts had summoned him, his father appeared. He was tall, terribly tall, nearly 2 meters, and he looked at me as though I were an intruder. His face twisted into a grotesque grimace, so exaggerated, so hateful, I can hardly believe a human face could make it, and then in an instant, it was gone, replaced by a gentle expression, as if someone had flipped a switch. He moved like a machine, mechanical, programmed. "You are Dor's friend from school," he said. His voice carried the same strange tone and accent as Dor's, though smoother, less stiff. "Nice to see you." Yes, I stammered, and then I heard it again, that sound from deeper inside the house, a low knocking, a scraping, growing louder. Dor's father glanced behind him, then turned those round eyes back to me. "Dor is very sick. He must stay in bed. We would invite you in, but you might catch it." The way he said catch it, his voice dropped several tones lower, thick and gurgling, barely human. I nearly fainted. I nodded quickly, muttered something I can't even remember, and hurried away. All I could think about was getting home, getting away. When I got back, I told my mom I'd been at Dor's house to give him my notebook. "Did you see his father?" she asked, almost playfully. "Yes, why? Terribly tall guy, right?" she said with a laugh. "Come on," I muttered. "He's a weirdo." "Why? You know you shouldn't judge people by their looks." "That's not it," I said, still shaken. "Son, did something happen? You're pale." "Nothing much, he just talks weird. He scared me a little." "Oh, they will have some strange accent," she replied. "Don't be nervous. You'll meet stranger people in your life." That night I lay in bed restless. The image of Dor, sick, trembling, and his father's grotesque face haunted me. And when I finally drifted off, the dreams came. I dreamed of their house, or concrete walls, but strange, black, plastic-like blocks of furniture. I saw myself walking through the living room, reaching a set of doors. Behind them, stairs leading down into a basement, and then darkness. The dream always cut off there. Dor never came back. He missed the end-of-year ceremony, and then the rumors spread. His parents hadn't contacted the principal. No explanations. It was as if they had simply evaporated. Summer holidays began. I passed all my subjects, even the math I hated. But I felt uneasy, strangely uneasy. Years passed, and slowly I forgot about Dor, forgot about that strange family, until one day in university, Martin, an old friend from school, brought him up again. "Remember that eccentric boy?" he asked. And just like that, the memories came rushing back. "Remember that freak?" Martin asked me one afternoon when we met in town. I laughed. "Oh God, of course I do. Remember me telling you about his house?" "Crazy, huh?" Martin grinned. "Maybe he and his folks were some kind of aliens." I laughed again, but the image came unbidden. Dor's father peeling off a human disguise, revealing something else beneath, and then I remembered the address. "Maybe we should go there," I said. "We won't go in. I just want you to see it." "Sure," Martin replied. "I've got time before class." We walked with purpose, and even though I'd forgotten the street's name, my feet remembered the way. The factories, the workshops, and then the house. It looked abandoned, neglected. The door stood open, sealed only with tape that had already been torn away. Around it, the earth was barren. Bushes and trees, long gone. Just rubble. No wonder it's empty, Martin muttered. Who would want to live in something like that? We stepped closer. I bent down and picked up a strip of the tape. Yellow. Flexible. Unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Or since. Inside, the living room was raw. Bare concrete walls, empty. Menacing. And in that silence, I felt it. A weight. As if Martin and I had stumbled into a place we were never meant to be. Let's get out of here, I whispered. Someone might catch us. Who's going to catch us? Martin shot back, his voice too loud in the empty room. Calm down. It's abandoned. We can explore a little, right? And then his gaze shifted toward the door on the far wall, and my heart sank. There must be a basement there, I whispered. What? Martin asked. How do you know? I don't know. I lied. I didn't tell him about the dream. Didn't want him to think I'd lost my mind. I stood frozen, rooted in fear while he strode forward. Door crashed to the ground with a terrible bang. Damn it, he shouted. They weren't even attached. Let's get out of here, I begged. Calm down. I want to see what's down there. No one's in here for ages. Maybe we'll find some old hobo. And then he disappeared into the darkness. Do you see anything? I called. Nothing. Find the light switch. My hand humbled along the wall until I found it, and with a click, the basement filled with pale, cold light. Martin screamed, and I felt my senses slipping. On the floor lay 3 naked figures, 2 large, 1 small. Not human, but so realistic it made my stomach turn. Bodies of some plastic-like material. I rubbed my eyes, but they didn't vanish. Martin panted, hysterical. What the hell is that? He croaked. Mannequins or what? It's them, I whispered. It's Dor and his parents. They had no genitals, rigid, genderless, their faces smeared with thick, reddish-orange paint. In the corner, 3 sets of clothes lay folded into perfect squares. And I recognized one instantly, the checkered shirt and belted trousers. Beside them, my notebook, untouched for 12 years. Covered in dust. We ran. We didn't stop until we reached the main street. My head was spinning, my chest heaving. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone. We had seen something we were never meant to see. I didn't know what to do. What was that? Martin gasped, breathless. I have no idea, I whispered, still stunned. This is insanity. No one will believe us. Why would they leave mannequins there? One messed up family, man. We tried to explain it away in the days that followed. Ordinary mannequins, we told ourselves. Maybe Dor's father had been an artist. Maybe it was some strange project, abandoned in a hurry. And my notebook. Just left behind with the rest of it. It sounded stupid. But it was easier to believe in stupidities than to confront what we had really seen, because what we had seen was alien, sinister. So we convinced ourselves, yes, they were mannequins and nothing more. A month later, I woke in the night with a strange feeling, the feeling of being watched. I rose slowly, walked to the window and pulled back the curtain, and there he was, Dor. Not a boy anymore, but a man. I knew him instantly, by the haircut, the face, and the notebook he clutched in his hand. My notebook. He stood in front of my house, staring up at me, his expression twisted into the same hateful grimace I had once seen on his father's face. And then I heard it. That sound. That awful sound. Something between a knock and a scrape. Dor took a step forward, then another, and another. He was coming closer, closer to the window, and I stood frozen, paralyzed with panic. And then I woke, sweating, shaking. It was just a nightmare, a stupid, nightmare. Relief washed over me. I showered, ate breakfast, sat down at the computer, trying to believe it was nothing more than a dream. I was about to start another page of my thesis when I noticed something outside the window. A letter, sticking out of the mailbox. I thought it was the book I'd ordered from abroad, but when I opened the old yellow envelope, no stamp, no address, it wasn't a book, it was my notebook. Months had passed since I'd last seen it, and in that moment, I felt myself unravel. I didn't go to a psychiatrist. How could I? What would I even say? That I was being hunted by something not human? Something wearing the shape of a boy? Something that had once called itself Door? I tried to bury it. But one day, by chance, I ran into the burly kid from school, the one who I once confronted Door, only to walk away terrified. Now he was grown, scar still on his arm. I thought maybe he could give me peace of mind. He recognized me instantly, and before I could even ask, he began to speak. He told me my full name, my address, the date I'd moved in, my mother's name, my father's, my sister's. He listed my phone number, my dog's name, even my email password. He knew everything, and as he spoke, his voice changed. He was no longer the voice of a man. It was as if the child he'd once been had peeled away, revealing something else beneath. I stood frozen, every muscle tense. Door was not human. He never had been, and neither were his parents. And then the man leaned closer. When I finished listing it all off, he said. I told him this. If he ever laid a hand on me, I would change into the most terrifying thing he would ever see. He was trembling now, gasping. His eyes, he whispered. Please believe me. His eyes, they pierced right through me, and then he broke down completely, panic etched into every line of his face. I know for a fact, as surely as I know my own name, the door is still out there. Somewhere. I was never the kind of guy with a career. I was the odds and ends type. Construction, delivery, even telemarketing for a few miserable weeks. That's how I became a johatsu, a night mover. In Japan, the johatsu are the evaporated people, the ones who vanish without a trace. They want a fresh start, away from debt, from stalkers, from the weight of the lives they've built. But there's another side to it. The ones who helped them disappear, that was us. We showed up after dark, no lights, no noise, packed up everything and left as if nothing had ever been there. The less we knew, the better. No real names, no questions. Cash only. Most of the time the jobs were straightforward. Families escaping ruin. Quiet children clutching toys as they vanished into the night. Sometimes it was sad, other times almost too easy. An empty apartment, bags already packed, just a quick grab and go. I learned not to ask about what was left behind. But not every job was easy. Some of them still haunt me. The first was a woman, thin, wild hair, darting eyes. She looked like she was waiting for someone to burst through the door at any second. We got the call late, as usual. When we arrived, she was already there, clutching her arms, like they were the only thing holding her together. She didn't say much, just rushed us inside, glancing over her shoulder at every sound, the creak of a door, the hum of a passing car. Each time she froze, then whispered, "Hurry, we need to move faster and keep quiet, please." At first I thought it was the usual story, someone running from an abusive ex, but this was different. It was the way she kept looking out the window, like any second someone might appear. Kenji, my partner, tried to crack a joke. She turned on him wide-eyed and hissed, "Quiet." Once everything was packed, she didn't even ride with us. She just told us to meet her in the new place, way out in the country, and then she was gone. Our truck rattled along empty roads for what felt like hours. We pulled up to an old, isolated house. No lights, no signs of life. We waited and waited, but she never showed. We called her phone, left voicemails, sent texts. Nothing. We didn't know what else to do, so we unloaded her things into the house, just like she told us. By dawn, we were exhausted, confused, and more than a little spooked. A few days later, I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. I looked her up. She wasn't just running from an ex. She was mixed up with the Yakuza. A snitch. Word was she was about to testify. The cops suspected she'd been followed that night. Taken care of between her old house and the new one. It was terrifying to think how close we'd been, minutes from death. I tried not to imagine what would have happened if she'd ridden with us. The second job came not long after. An old, creaking apartment building. We were called to move an elderly man. Someone who looked like he belonged there, tucked away, forgotten. But the moment he let us in, I knew this wasn't going to be a normal job. The apartment was filled with strange trinkets. Objects I couldn't name. Artifacts that looked ancient. Statues with twisted faces, masks with hollow eyes, symbols painted on the walls in faded reds and blacks. The air was thick. The kind of thick that makes your body heavy. The others got to work, rattling the artifacts carefully, but I couldn't shake the feeling the room was watching me. And then I saw it. A door across the room. I was sure it hadn't been there before. It was just there. Dark. Slightly ajar. No one else seemed to notice, so I walked over and opened it. Inside was another room cluttered with more of those artifacts. I stepped in, drawn to a small statue covered in strange symbols. But when I turned back, the doorway was gone. Panic shot through me. I spun around, desperate, searching. And now there were two doors, side by side on the opposite wall. I chose the door on the right and walked through. Another room, identical to the last. Dusty shelves, dark corners. But the walls, they bent, stretched, twisted in ways that didn't make sense. I called out for my co-workers. No answer. Only my own voice echoing back, lower, deeper, until it didn't even sound like mine. I walked faster. Every doorway led to another room, and another, each one the same. It was as if the apartment was folding outward from itself, an endless, expanding maze. The walls began to close in, narrower, tighter. I started to run. Every doorway was a dead end, every room a mirror of the last. Statues, masks with hollow eyes, watching me. My breath came in short gasps, and every time I looked over my shoulder, a shadow, always just out of sight. The further I went, the more it followed, dipping out of view, waiting. Time slipped away. Every step, every turn, only deeper, deeper into the labyrinth. I shouted, I pounded on the walls, but the shadow was closer now, darker, taking shape. The air grew heavy, suffocating, my chest tightened. And then came the smell. Rotten, like old meat, like the breath of something alive. I was exhausted, ready to give up, to let it happen. But then a light, faint, through a doorway ahead. I bolted, feet stumbling, lungs burning. I crashed through the door and staggered back into the main room. I turned, half expecting the nightmare maze behind me, but there was only a wall, smooth, unbroken. The doorway was gone, as if it had never existed, and everything was just as it had been, as if nothing had happened at all. Time hadn't passed a single second while I was gone. A month later, we started work on the Fujioto Dansu complex. That was the last time I ever worked as a johatsu. We were called in late to an old, decaying apartment building, the kind that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the day it was built. The family that hired us were strange, even by our standards. The father answered the door, tall, rail thin, skin pale as death, translucent, almost bluish in the dim hallway light. He didn't email, just nodded once and waved us inside. The mother wasn't any better, silent, her eyes dark and sunken like she hadn't slept in days. Both of them seemed like they were holding something back, like we were intruding on a private moment. But avoid the room at the end of the hall until the very end, the father said. His voice was cold, distant. We didn't ask questions, we never did, just nodded and got to work. The apartment was huge, bigger than any I'd seen in the city, high ceilings, ancient wood floors. Thick velvet curtains that blocked out every trace of light. It felt like stepping into another century. As we moved through the place, loading the truck with old furniture and boxes, the feeling only grew stronger. Something was off. Yang stale, thick with dust and something else, something rotten. The father hovered near the back of the apartment, watching us with those cold, sunken eyes. And the mother disappeared into the room at the end of the hall, leaving us mostly alone. An hour ticked by. We were almost done. Just one room left. The room they told us to avoid. Aichu winced. I looked over. He was clutching his hand. A cut from a loose nail on one of the old crates. "You good?" I whispered. He nodded, and the father appeared again, pale, silent. His eyes flicked from the last pile of boxes to the door at the end of the hall. "It's time," he said. Without another word, he opened it. The forbidden room. And out she stepped. A girl, barely a teenager, skin as pale as her parents', hair limp around her shoulders, eyes too wide, too dark. She moved like she was half asleep, till she caught the scent. Her head snapped toward Raichu, her gaze locked on his bleeding hand, and something primal flickered across her face. It happened so fast. Her nostrils flared, and then she lunged, a blur of pale skin and teeth. She sank them into his neck before any of us could react. The scream that tore out of him, I'll never forget it. We froze. Half a second too long. By the time we moved, Raichu had already slumped on the floor, half his neck gone. The father's eyes went wide, and then calm. But the girl wasn't done. She crouched over him, lifted her head, her eyes burned with something feral, something inhuman, and then she went to Yasu. He bolted for the door. She chased him, shrieking. The mother appeared in the doorway, her eye wide with panic. But it didn't matter. She had no control, not anymore. Not over her daughter, not over herself. She wouldn't even have control over herself or her husband. I watched as they both lifted their heads, sniffing the air, and then they changed. Whatever thin thread of restraint they'd been clinging to snapped. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, an old lamp, and swung it at the mother. But she was too fast, too strong. Her movements fluid, unnatural, as if she could read my thoughts before I even acted. I ran. Didn't think, just bolted for the front door. I turned left toward the elevators and froze. The little girl was there, straddling Yasu's body, her mouth buried in the open cavity of his neck. A scream echoed from my right. An apartment door swung open. A tough-looking man stepped out, confused. Behind me, I heard the scurrying. The mother, the father, coming fast. I sprinted past the man into his apartment and slammed the door, locked it. Seconds later, his fists pounded against the wood. Then came the screams. The tearing, the sound of him being ripped apart. My eyes darted around the room, and that's when I saw it. A samurai sword, hanging on the wall. I didn't think. I grabbed it, checked the blade. Dull, useless, just for show. But I kept it anyway. Outside, the building was alive with carnage. Screams, snarls, the wet tearing of flesh. I threw open the window. The fire escape was there, but it only led one way. Up. I climbed. Behind me, glass shattered. The girl, she leapt after me. Her nails scraped against the metal, shrieking sparks. Too fast, too relentless. She reached for my ankle. I swung the sword. It connected. Her scream was inhuman. She fell. Her body hit the ground below with sickening crack. I looked down. Her lower half twisted backwards, her head split open, arms bent at impossible angles. But she was still moving, crawling, dragging herself back toward the building. And I kept climbing. I reached the roof, collapsed, but only for a moment. I pressed myself against the rooftop door. Below, their voices rose, hungry, feral, bloodlust, echoing up the stairwell. I shoved everything I could find against the door and prayed. The first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon. Screams erupted below as the light cut through the windows, but I knew they weren't all gone. Not yet. And my only way out was back down. Through the building, through the dark, with nothing but a dull samurai sword. I slipped through the rooftop door, into the stairwell, 10 floors, most of them pitch black. The air was heavy, the silence broken only by the drip of blood. As I descended, I realized the tenants had tried to escape too, but none of them had made it. The stairwell was a slaughterhouse. Shredded bodies, organs, bones, blood licking every step. Halfway down, I froze. A sound. Wet, squelching like skin slapping against blood-soaked concrete. I gripped the sword tighter, my heart pounding. Step by step, I crept lower until I reached the landing where we'd been working just hours before, and stopped. The floor was a massacre. Blood splattered the walls, body parts strewn like broken dolls, but it was the body in the middle that made bile rise in my throat. Jenko, or what was left of him. His chest torn open, organs spilling across the landing, bones pulled from muscle and tendon, his face, what little was left, frozen in a twisted, agonized scream. I had no choice. I had to step over him, so I did. Gingerly, careful not to disturb anything, and then a sound. Low, guttural, a growl from behind me. I whipped around, just in time to see Jenko's hand twitch. His eyes, once glassy, lifeless, snapped open, glowing with a sickly red light. Blood pooled around him, bubbling as if something inside was trying to claw its way out. Before I could react, Jenko's body jerked violently. His limbs snapped back into place with a sickening crack. His mouth stretched wide, revealing teeth long, razor-sharp. Blood dripped from his mangled face as he let out a feral screech. He wasn't human anymore. I stumbled backward, tripping over the stairs as his twisted form lunged. He moved like a puppet on broken strings, dragging what was left of his body across the landing, hands clawing at the air. I fell down a flight of stairs. The sword slipped from my grip. I hit the ground hard, vision blurring, but his screech, that awful screech, snapped me back. I grabbed the sword, kept moving. He was still coming, crawling, tumbling, his body broken, muscles shredded, but it didn't matter. Something in his blood kept him alive, kept him hungry. The stairwell was waking up. I scrambled to my feet, slipping on blood that coated my shoes. Every step was a nightmare. I couldn't get a grip, couldn't move fast enough. I fell again, sliding down another flight. Jenko's screeches echoed through the stairwell, each one louder, each one more frantic. And then I heard them. Others answering his call. The tenants, the entire building was awake now. The shredded body on the walls, the floors, they were moving, joining the chase. Above me, a door slammed open. The growls were rising, low, wet screeches echoing closer, filling the stairwell. They knew I ain't there, and they were coming. I forced my legs to move. One step, then another, almost at the bottom. The lobby. I threw myself through the door, slammed it shut behind me. It wouldn't hold, not for long, and then I saw her, standing between me and the front doors. The little girl. Her skin was healed, her clothes torn, soaked in blood, and she smiled. I didn't stop, didn't think. I ran straight for her, gripping the sword tight. The blade rammed through her chest, momentum carrying us both forward. It did nothing, she didn't even flinch. But then, we crashed through the front doors, and the sunlight touched her face. She screamed, her skin ignited, flames crawling over her body, devouring her, until nothing remained but ash. Behind me, the tenants burst from the stairwell, screeching, hitting. The sunlight hit them too. One by one, they erupted, exploding into plumes of ash. I kept running, didn't look back. I don't know how long I ran, or how far, but when my legs finally gave out, I was in the countryside, surrounded by nothing but open fields. I collapsed, chest heaving, hands shaking, covered in blood and ash, but I was alive. And that's where we'll leave it tonight. Stories of people who vanish, who bargain, who become something other than human. Stories that remind us how thin the line really is between the ordinary and the unexplainable. For me, the one that lingers is The Devil's Bargain. Not because it was the scariest, but because it was so believable. Greed, temptation, the slow erosion of who we are, it's a horror we all recognize, even if we don't meet him in a coffee shop. Maybe you had a different favorite. Maybe one of these stories is still echoing in your head. If so, let it sit with you a while. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope you found yourself drawn in, unsettled, maybe even a little haunted. And if you'd like to hear more nights like this, you know where to find me. Until next time, sleep well.